Welcome to the Always Becoming podcast with Dr. Lynn Santiago. Dr. Lynn and her guests explore two questions: who am I? And are we always becoming? We all have a becoming story. Be inspired by the personal becoming stories told by guests who share the risks and challenges, the successes and the letdowns, the joys and the heartaches they experience while on their own becoming journey. Here's your host, Dr. Lynn Santiago.
Hello and welcome to the Always Becoming podcast. Today I got to sit down and talk with Kelsey Buell. Kelsey is the founder of the Burnout Prevention Project. She is also an accomplished violinist and singer and has performed for audiences as large as 20,000. And let me tell you, that is pretty huge. As a corporate recruiter, Kelsey has been able to interview over 2,000 candidates. And in her conversations with these candidates, she found that people are generally exhausted and disengaged from their jobs and in search for something more. In our conversation, Kelsey shares her belief about how, as we get older, we start to have doubts and we can become shut down. We talk also about how well-intentioned people in our lives can plant those seeds of doubt, and we can then lose confidence in ourselves. Kelsey talks about navigating the challenges of life and growing to always become a better version of ourselves. And also about finding purpose in our lives, in our day-to-day relationships. And that purpose, life purpose, does not mean that it has to be some huge kind of thing that we are always in search of. So Kelsey offers a free 20-minute discovery call to reignite your engagement. And this is particularly your engagement with your job, with your career, and as a way to address and prevent burnout. You will hear more about that as you listen to the interview. So here is Kelsey.
Hello, Kelsey.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. I am so glad to be able to have this conversation with you. I've been looking forward to it. I've taken the time to kind of go through your website, and I know you have some really great stuff there. So thank you so much for taking your time to be here today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Great. So, this podcast is about exploring that question of, are we always becoming? And that question of like, who am I? Are we stagnant? Are we always growing? And just that kind of a concept. And I always ask the first question to kick it off. What do you think? Are we always becoming?
Absolutely. Well, 100%. I believe that we are always learning and growing. I remember hearing a speaker one time whose message was about better than yesterday. How every day we have this opportunity to wake up and be just a little bit of a new and improved, better version of ourselves every single day. And I know I even look back at the person who I was right out of college in comparison to the person I am today. And I'm still learning and growing, but man, it is really, when you stop to do some introspection and think about all of the little things that you've done to improve yourself and change and grow, I can't even imagine all of the things that we are constantly evolving and doing as we get older.
I know. I remember, and I think this is probably very common. In my 20s, I thought, okay, I know everything, right? I got to that. I was like, okay, I got my education to this point. I know everything. And then I got into my 30s and I was like, okay, I thought I knew everything, but I really knew everything right now. And then just as you say, as we move through our life, things either become clearer or we gain insight or we realize we were wrong all the time. And I believe the same as you is that we are, always in that process of becoming. I love what you said about our becoming and that it's something that we are always kind of growing into. Right? Yeah. Share with me some of your becoming. I did a little bit, I looked at your bio and I was just amazed at all these things that you have done. being a violinist and a singer, and you said, crowds of 20,000. That was just like, what? So how did you get from there to where you are now?
Well, if there's anything that I've learned is we think that life is going to be this continuous upward kind of leading us to success, but it's really an up and down experience. And so I think about growing up, as a child, I loved to perform. So performing in front of audiences wasn't a huge deal for me until I got into about middle school. And then I started to get really, really nervous all the time. And I think it comes from this level of when we're really young, we have these kind of this open mind, and we feel like we can be anything and anyone. And then as we start getting older, we start having doubts and maybe being shut down. And I think one of the most challenging parts, but also the exciting part about this always becoming concept is that as life goes on, we get thrown a lot of curveballs. We have to go through a lot of challenges. And so we become more resilient, but we also have to learn how to really navigate those challenges, because life doesn't usually get easier. It oftentimes gets harder as time goes on.
See, that's a lesson that comes to you around 40,
Yeah.
At least that was for me.
Yes, it's seriously. And it's the longer we're here, the more challenges we're going to encounter. And I think for me as a former performer, and now I do a lot of speaking, and I take a lot of risks in my job. I always am kind of putting myself out there, which is exciting. But I think the more risks you take, the more that voice inside your head starts filling it with doubts. So my journey has been, again, this up and down experience of feeling this extreme confidence and excitement to maybe getting shut down a few times and then starting to have that confidence dip. And then you always have to find ways to kind of build yourself back up.
Yes. I think about, I don't know if this relates or that this has any connection to what you're saying, but the impostor syndrome.
Yes.
Like this syndrome or that happens that you get to a certain level, of your education and experience, but you think, okay, people, you're just pulling one over on people. Like you really aren't who you are portraying yourself to be. And then with experience, and but then there's the next thing, right? The next step where for each of those kind of jumps, there is perhaps the sense of being an imposter, and that other people are looking at, that you think you're going to be revealed at any time as a phony.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that relates to you, but I hear that a lot, and I know that I have experienced that myself.
Yeah.
And then the overcoming of the doubt and the fears, and believing in yourself and building that confidence up again.
Yeah. Well, and Lynn, you just made me think of, and this is totally off the cuff, but you grow and then you plateau, and then you grow and then you plateau. It's kind of like stairs.
Yes.
That's what, as you were talking, came to my mind, where you kind of take this new challenge, you learn, you grow, and then all of a sudden you kind of become more stagnant and you realize, okay, it's time for me to go up another stair. And as you climb the stairs, what happens is this new form of you, this new version of you, it's almost like there's this voice inside your head that says, no, you need to go back down to being average. You shouldn't, this new version of you, I don't like it. You are, now that you've grown, you're kind of in this new state. And I think oftentimes the people that we love and that are closest to us will often even say things that make us think we should go back to where we were, instead of being this new and improved different version of ourselves. And so I think there's this dissonance, right, between who we're becoming and who maybe we feel others think we should be in comparison to how we've grown.
Yes, you just said so much in that couple of sentences. First, I always say that when people say things like, Oh, are you sure you really want to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to really be a lot of time. That's going to take a lot of time. No, or, that's really scary. And it's their fear that they're imposing on you,
Mm,
their own fear, right? That they,
yeah.
if they can stop you, then they feel better because
Mhm.
for whatever reason, their own fear is being imposed. Oh,
Yeah. Well,
oh.
I think to me, it hits on, and I don't know if you struggle with this at all, but I think about price point when you're in sales where you're, selling something or you're trying to build a clientele. Sometimes you'll have people that will say, "Oh, that's way too expensive," but you have to put a value on the work that you're doing. And I've had friends that are like, "What? You're going to charge
Gosh.
that amount for this product? I can't believe you're charging that much." Or
Mhm.
vice versa, maybe someone even
Exactly.
says it's cheap. And so there's all of these, like when you're building relationships and when you're trying to even grow a business, people love to give their opinion on what it is that you're promoting, and again, how much you're charging, and all of these different elements of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes the second that someone expresses doubt in you, you start doubting yourself. And
Mhm.
that's where the downward spiral can take you in the opposite direction, versus
Mhm.
that forward evolution and growth.
Right. I always look at it as a swimming against the tide
Yeah.
that there's so many people that well-intended that have expectations for you. And you just said that a minute ago about their expectations that it takes a lot of courage and strength, bravery to go against that. And sometimes it's social and cultural,
Yeah.
right? That you in order to get where you want to or you're heading, you've got to go against some of this stuff that you may have even been raised with and told that this is the right way to be. Oh,
Mm.
so I always see that as that courage. I always, Instagram, I always say, be brave
Yes.
because it takes bravery in order to become who you really truly are meant to become.
Yeah. Well, and also one of the mindset things I've heard recently, I can't remember where I heard this, but um you're going to face resistance, but if you see everything as resistance, it's going to be a lot more difficult than if you meet resistance with just going for it. So you're
Mhm.
talking a lot about, swimming against the current, and I think a lot of us face, maybe it's a strong resistance or a little bit of resistance to what we're doing, but we have to kind of have, it's kind of like what you put out into the world is what you'll receive. So if you're putting this energy out of, "Hey, I can do this, I know it's going to work, I know that I have something to offer to the world," and constantly having that mentality, kind of what you put out there ends up, I feel like, finding you, if you will.
Mhm. Or even winding up being around people who have the same kind of mindset, right?
Yes.
Um, like-minded people. I would say surround yourself with like-minded people because those are the people that are going to encourage you and support you and believe in you. And
Absolutely.
when you're around them, you feel much more like yourself because you don't have to cover, you don't have to
Mhm.
cover and pretend to be what others expect you to be.
Well, and Lynn, to spin off of that, I think oftentimes too, it's being very thoughtful and intentional about who you share what with,
Hmm.
because there are people in your life. I know my family and my husband, they're very, very supportive of what I do. But sometimes if I go into depth and into the weeds of what I'm working on, they just don't always get it
Yeah.
all the time. And so
Hmm.
recognizing who is kind of in my space and gets me and understands me, and those are the people that I am more likely to share some of the exciting business ventures that I'm going
Hmm.
forward with, versus maybe going quite so in depth with people that I know are going to question me or maybe just don't fully understand what I'm trying to accomplish.
Right.
So being
Yes.
very thoughtful about who
Yes.
you're sharing your ideas with too, I think is important, not only for your own mental health, but just so that you can continue to push forward in the direction that you want to go.
Yes. That is just an excellent point. Absolutely. People, I think a lot of people tend to stay stay with those people that, like you said, their loved ones and friends, the people that have been kind of part of their tribe,
Mhm.
and sometimes even feel like they are betraying or rejecting their tribe in order to
Yeah.
be themselves.
Yep.
Oh, and so you are the founder of Burnout Prevention Project.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit, what is that about? What do you do?
Yeah. So I'll try to make this short. I get so excited when I talk about all of
Mm-hmm.
these things. So, um, my background is in recruiting. I spent a
Mm-hmm.
number of years recruiting, and in a very short amount of time, I had interviewed over 2,000 people in just a matter of a couple of years. And
Ah,
what happens when you repeatedly experience something over and over again is you start to see some themes.
yes.
So after interviewing so many people for a job position, I started about 20 minutes into the interview, the candidate would lean in and they would say, I just am feeling very burned out in my role. Or they would maybe say something along the lines of, my team, we're just not jiving. My manager doesn't value my abilities and my talents the way that I think they should. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was hearing these conversations day in and day out. And as I mentioned, I did over 2,000 interviews in a short amount of time. And I actually share that not to brag, but to say I burned myself out
Okay.
because I had such a high level of activity because
Mm.
of the expectations that I was placing on myself.
Yes.
And so it was kind of this journey of recognizing some of these things for myself, but also seeing what others in the world were experiencing. And we spend so much time at work
Yes.
that, to me, it's really important that we find ways to grow where we're planted and love
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so through that,
Love what
I,
you do. And can you read that in behind me?
oh yeah, love what you do. I can. Oh my gosh. Yes. You know
Yes.
what? I noticed that earlier, and it's funny. It's almost as if it was subtly giving me that message to
Mhm.
say,
But it's
to
so true
say
because
that.
one of the things that you, again, that I have read about you, that you say that it's use your talents, right? And be passionate about what you do. And then there's this concept you said, I'm not remembering it, um, engagement versus,
Mm,
what was that? Burnout versus engagement.
yeah. Yeah. So what I noticed, a couple things is that burnout is something that it's kind of like mental health where we don't like to talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I'm just trying to bring to the forefront this term of burnout and recognize that, someone said this the other day, to see burnout as a blessing, to really see if you're feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted, which is the definition
Mm-hmm.
of burnout, that means it's time to make a change. Now, it might not be a career change. It
Mm-hmm.
might just be shifting the way you're viewing some of your tasks, doing some different things with your schedule,
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing things a little bit differently, taking a little bit more time to rest, and then
Mm-hmm.
actually getting more done because you're more rested. So there's
Yes.
a lot of different things that I think people can do, but ultimately I see burnout as a continuum. So if engaged is on one side and burnout is on the other side,
Okay.
you're often shifting between the two. You're either maybe on this trajectory towards burnout, or you're on this trajectory towards more engagement.
Mm-hmm.
There's, as humans, we do have the power to turn the ship around. And so if we can kind of see that continuum, you can
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, on a scale of burned out to engaged,
Mm-hmm.
where am I? Am I closer to complete burnout, or am I closer to being fully engaged? And if I'm closer to one or the other, if I'm closer to burnout, how can I get back to being a little bit more excited about what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about, you know, I think I don't know, you may have more knowledge about this. My thought is that most people don't do what they love in work. that they are not as fortunate as some, or they did not necessarily follow what was, kind of that inner voice, or that authentic self of them, because they were more attracted to money or prestige, title, or again, the expectation of family that you're supposed to be this. And so a lot of time is invested, money is invested in a career, going in that career path that really just didn't really even like. And then finding themselves at some point where, now what do I do? I've got a family that's counting on this level of income. I've got, all of these other things that are kind of key. I call them the golden handcuffs, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of that. The golden handcuffs keeps all these benefits and money and all this other stuff. Prestige keeps a person kind of handcuffed to their career, but that can burn them out. And that was a lot said. To get to the question, what do you tell somebody who really isn't in the position necessarily at the time to shift into a place where they are working and earning income? It's something that really is connected to them, that is really their authentic self. And prevent burnout. Like, there may not be the right time to make a switch, and they're really not happy in that career, the industry. And what can they do to still feel fulfilled in their life?
Right. Well, I have all these different thoughts racing through my head as you're talking. The first thing that I would say is, to your point, the older you get and the further along in your career you get, it becomes much more difficult to take risks for your career, because if you have a family, you have a stable income, that is often going to trump finding a job that's your dream job, because you need to provide for your family so that you can continue to live the life that you've built. So the first thing that I would say is, for any young people that are just stumbling into their careers, is it's very important to, from an early age, kind of do a lot of self-reflection and understanding what drives you. So as you get older, one of the things that I'm a huge proponent and advocate of is behavioral assessments.
Okay.
So I do a lot specifically with the predictive index, but there are so many out there. I mean, Myers-Briggs, Strength Finder. That is where I always recommend people start, because, for example, you might be in a job that you don't find a lot of fulfillment in. Maybe you are doing a lot of behind the scenes work, but you're naturally more a people person. Well, without having taken the time to maybe take a couple of behavioral assessments and learn a little bit more about what drives you, you might not even know that, really have identified that about yourself.
Yes, so it could take years to get to that place of identifying it. Like you're saying, that a behavioral assessment might get you there a lot quicker. You don't have to go through decades
it's
of experience.
Like we now have Google, right? Like if we want an answer to something, we have Google. Well, if you want to know what you'll love and what you'll be passionate about, find some behavioral assessments. And even if you just Google like behavioral assessments, there are plenty out there that you can take. But just what I found is that the more I sought out to understand myself, the easier it was in the workplace to insert myself in projects and roles that truly gave me fulfillment. So it's interesting, because one of the terminology, or one of the things that I often say is, when you start a new job, the first 3 months, you're just trying to prove yourself. It's the honeymoon phase. I often compare being in the workforce to kind of similar to dating. So it's the honeymoon phase, right? But then on day 91, after 3 months, on day 91, what happens? Typically, you'll find yourself settling in and either thinking, oh, shoot, this is not what I signed up for, or okay, yep, this is what I signed up for. I feel like I'm swimming with the current, right?
Mm-hmm.
Swimming downstream. It's easy. I'm flowing. Whereas on day 91, oftentimes that's when you recognize, oh no, this is going to be an upstream swim for the duration of my time here.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but I think if I were to just summarize, look for some behavioral assessments. The more you understand yourself, the more you can really channel your passions and your strengths into your job. And then the last thing I would say is just not being afraid to talk to your leaders about what you love to do. Because I find that I had many opportunities to take on stretch projects or different roles within the companies I've been in, simply because I was willing to verbalize what I was good at and what I was passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say it enough times, often if you have a good leader, they will help you grow in the areas that you want to grow. And if they don't, that's when I would say, are you sure you're in the right place?
Exactly, because sometimes that is the case. A lot of times we talk about find your passion, right? And what is the meaning of your life? And people struggle with that. There's like, well, how do I find meaning in what I'm doing or passion in what I'm doing? And I often talk about how there may be other ways to get that, to express themselves in a more authentic way, or to feel that they're contributing and that their life has meaning or purpose that may not be necessarily what they're doing in their work. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's awesome that you're asking that question, because today we do a weekly midweek motivation, we call it. And today our blog and our social media post was about purpose. And it was about how it's very stressful if you look at your meaning in life and you look at your purpose and you think that you have to come up with this one big thing.
Yeah.
And so first I would start by thinking about how can you bring the most joy and passion to this moment to give it purpose. And so for me right now, my purpose in this moment, Lynn, is just to connect and have an authentic conversation. Whereas tonight, my purpose might be to be a good wife, or your purpose doesn't have to be this one, or your meaning.
Exactly. That's so
thing. It's not
right.
like
There's many purposes. Yes.
A lightning bolt isn't going to come down and strike you, and all of a sudden you're going to have this big purpose. For some people, a lot of people, it's just being a good family member. Oftentimes it comes from a spiritual or faith standpoint of that's my purpose. But ultimately, what I find is that it's kind of like Disney, where, all of these Disney characters, usually the Disney princess, they're being called to something larger. So I think it's more about what is your something larger, and how can you put that as a sticky note or something right in front of you every day. So for me, sometimes my something larger, again, is just to be a good wife and a good family member. But in my career, I just have this passion to help high achieving women specifically, but also businesses with preventing burnout. And so I don't believe that we are meant to just have this one overall thing.
Right. This grand calling, as there are multiple, as you're speaking, I was thinking about a client I had who's a combat vet and retired. So veterans or military service members, their whole identity is about their being a soldier, or being a warrior, or being, there's a lot of, there's a military culture. It's a completely different lifestyle. Many people don't understand that. And it becomes very difficult when a soldier takes their uniform off for the last time, and try to figure out now what's my meaning now? What's my purpose? What am I doing? And I did my research on suicide suicide attempts with veterans, and that was one of the leading
Mhm.
factors, was this sense of loss of meaning.
Yeah.
And so I was working with this older retired, and he had that. He was struggling with this sense of meaning. He couldn't find it. He was depressed. He had some suicidal attempts. And then his daughter got pregnant with twins.
Mm.
And all of a sudden he was like, I know what my purpose is now. It's to be a good grandfather. It's to be a grandfather to my granddaughters, and
Mm.
that just shifted him completely. And so it can come as a surprise, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
what your purpose or the meaning of your life in at that time, as you said, like what's
Mhm.
now, can be so much different than it was years before, and
Yeah.
and in a way that's very surprising that you may never expect it.
Absolutely. Well, and we live in this world of it's never enough is kind of this
Mhm.
mentality that's been instilled in us. Like once I'm successful enough or have enough money or I'm thin enough or I'm well connected enough. Like
Mhm.
once I am enough, I will have made it and be living in my purpose. And that's such a false and well, it's truly such a horrible thing to live by, because truly we spend most of our life in the present, but yet we're thinking about the future.
Yeah.
And it's so much more important to just pause and think about how can I be at peace in this moment versus
Yeah.
constantly striving for more. Not that we shouldn't work hard or want more for ourselves, but there becomes this point at which the idea of more can be really detrimental to us as
Mhm.
well.
I think that's kind of one of the confusing things about always becoming, because it's like, I am enough. And I'm
Yeah.
always becoming, right? It's like, I'm
Right.
enough. There doesn't need to be anything else, but yet there's always this
Right.
becoming and being potentially somebody else, certainly
Right.
not
Well,
the same person.
and I
Yeah.
think what you're talking about is it's internal, right? Always becoming
Mhm.
internally, whereas there's this external, we seek so much external stuff and validation and
Mhm.
materialistic things oftentimes, where remembering that you're always becoming, that's you're always working on yourself to be a
Yeah.
better version of yourself.
Mhm. And it's not coming drawn from the belief that you're not enough.
Yeah.
Right, that like
Right.
that striving is not coming from the belief that I'm not enough, I need to do more, which is what you're
Yeah.
saying. It's
To
coming
do more.
from
Yes.
this natural pull, what you're resonating towards, that kind of keeps you going.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
about being more versus doing more,
Yes, that's great.
right?
Okay, yes.
Yes.
So we have to wrap up. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it. Your contact information is going to be on the podcast, the episode description. But if
Awesome.
you can provide, maybe a website or an email now, so listeners can, write down real quick if they want to contact you.
Yes. So first and foremost, one of the best ways to connect with me is LinkedIn. So
Okay.
if you just add me on LinkedIn, Kelsey, Kelsey, Joy, my middle name, Joy, and then Buell, Buell, Kelsey Joy Buell, that connect with me on LinkedIn. But also my email is kelsey@burnoutpreventionproject.com. So you can also send me an email, and then burnoutprevention.com is our website as well. So
Mm-hmm.
there's really a lot of ways to connect with us. But again, one of the easiest ways is just add me as a friend on LinkedIn. Would love
Mm-hmm.
to connect.
Yeah, and you do these neat things, as you were saying before, behavioral assessment, and then
Yes. Yes.
discovery
Calls. Yes.
calls. So that's something that people may be really interested in. And your website is just full of all the programs that you do and the presentations that you do. And I can tell they're very needed, and a lot of companies to benefit from those for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn.
So I'd like to end with a quote. Is there a statement, a quote, a mantra that you use that kind of keeps you going, that helps encourage and support you along the way?
Well, and you told me you were going to ask this, and I have a couple written down. Do you mind if I share two?
Yep. Nope. That's
Okay.
fine.
The first one is, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will.
No, my goodness. Yes.
I love that quote because it reminds us that we are in control of our growth. We are in control of who we become.
Mhm.
And I think if you're not prioritizing what you want and how you want to grow and where you want to go, someone else will take control of your schedule and your time and tell you what to do. So that one is really huge for me. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will.
Yes.
The other one that I just love is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Okay. Yes.
And the reason why I share that is because life is hard. In this journey of always becoming, you can't do it alone. And so the importance of leaning on others so that you can go farther and do more. And I mean, even like this, Lynn, with you and I, now we're connected and we're
Right.
sharing these ideas. And it's a beautiful thing when you can collaborate with others that are like-minded and will help you get further and farther than even you would have gone on your own. So,
great. Awesome. Yes. Awesome. Again, thank you so much for being here. I just, again, love this conversation. Very stimulating, loads of information. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was a great conversation.
So there you have it. Wise woman Kelsey Buell with the Burnout Prevention Project. Check out her website. You'll get some really great information about the presentation she gives, workshops, and the one-on-one coaching that she offers. That's at www.burnoutpreventionproject.com. Don't forget about her offer for a free 20-minute discovery call. That sounds really interesting and definitely worth checking out. Kelsey makes a great point when she said, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. I really think about what that means, and does that apply to you? Are you in control of your own growth, or have you given it over to somebody else? Really, truly ask yourself that question as you travel along your becoming journey this week. And thank you for listening to the Always Becoming podcast. Visit the podcast website at www.alwaysbecomingpodcast.com, or you can find this podcast on your favorite podcast apps like iTunes, iHeart, Google Podcast, Spotify, Podcast Addicts, and so many more. You will get to listen to other inspiring guests and their chapters of their own becoming stories. So subscribe so you don't miss any of these episodes. And don't forget also, for daily words of wisdom and support on your becoming journey, I post things all day long to help support you and remind you that you are always becoming and that you have that innate drive to grow. You can follow me on Instagram at becoming_with_Dr. Lynn. That is LYNNE. Thank you.